Mindfulness and Changemakers is a presentation by jballard. Ballard has been practicing meditation, teaching yoga, and working for social justice for over 16 years, finding them to be intersecting and interdependent paths that deepen, ground, and nourish one another. Jacoby has taught yoga in queer and trans communities, to survivors of sexual violence, to people recovering from addiction, to homeless folks, and to everyone else as well. He is a co-founder of Third Root Community Health Center in Brooklyn, serves on the advisory board of the Yoga Service Council, and is faculty of Off the Mat into the World.
Hello, greetings. Welcome to Shambhala Mountain Center's second annual Awaken the World online event. My name is Jacoby Ballard. I'm really honored to be here and have the opportunity to work with you in this capacity. I'm a Buddhist teacher and a yoga teacher. I currently live in upstate New York. I'm been involved in social justice work for a long time, for over 15 years. And I'm currently involved in doing more like diversity or anti-oppression work within contemplative communities. And so I think that's what brings me to this specific event, because Awaken the World is such a dear topic to me. I'm a founder of an organization called Third Root Community Health Center in Brooklyn. We're a worker-owned cooperative that offers yoga, Buddhism, acupuncture, massage, herbal medicine, all at sliding scale prices, and really work at the intersection of social justice work and healing. And that's what I want to talk about today. That work at that intersection is has become my work in the world. And I think the work of social justice and the work of contemplation, mindfulness, meditation, embodiment really serve one another. Social justice, I think about like changing the world out there, changing harmful policies, combating and healing police brutality, examining how our schools are being run and if that is really producing vital citizens that are really contributing or detracting from that, examining our healthcare system. So social justice work I think of as like trying to change structures in society in the interest of creating less harm, right? So there's harm reduction, and ultimately to be open and possible and healing for all of us to create the possibilities not only to survive, but to thrive in our lives. And then I think of mindfulness and a lot of the yoga work is really changing the world in here, right? Becoming aware of all the things that get us caught, all the things that we're not aware of, all of the ways that our past interferes with our present, or the anticipation of the future of what's coming might hinder us from being in the moment. So in my own path, before founding Third Root in 2008, the world of social justice and the world of healing were really separate and really judged one another. Social justice work having this idea that there's so much work to do out there that we don't have time to take care of ourselves. We don't have time to go and sit silently on a meditation retreat. And a real critique of the privilege of that, right? Because inevitably whenever we're taking time out for ourselves, that often costs money that we're paying out, but it also takes away from our employment in that moment, that week, that day. So social justice really critiquing that, which I think is important. And then what I found also in mindfulness and yoga communities is that we were repeating a lot of the patterns of society. We were repeating a lot of the racism, the sexism, the transphobia, without really knowing it. So I think they really serve each other. In a lot of the social justice work that I've done, I've seen really powerful organizers, fundraisers, activists get burned out, right? Become so overwhelmed by the work that there is to do in the world and in their communities and in their families and even in their own organization, that it's a lot, right? Social change work is a lot to change the way the world is run. However minute or broad that is really deep work that takes a lot of energy. And so if we're not taking care of ourselves in that process, then we're inevitably going to repeat the harm in the world, right? So if we're not transforming the anger and the rage and the grief at what our world is faced with right now, all the natural disasters, all of the struggles against fracking, all of the struggles against police brutality, refugees and who's acceptable where, it's really, it's a lot. So if we're not processing through that, if we're not moving that energy up and out through a really deliberate spiritual process, whether that's mindfulness and yoga or something else, I think all spiritual practices really, really lend themselves towards that sustainability in the world. But if we're not doing that work, then inevitably some of the ways in which we're hurt are bound to be replicated in our partnerships, in our families, in our organizations, in our communities. Right? Noah Levine said that hurt people hurt people. And I think there's two kind of ways to take that. One is that gives me so much compassion for people in the world that are creating a lot of harm, of like, wow, this is not their nature. I know that there's goodness in there, and I know that they're wired for that goodness. And so they must really be hurting if they're doing this to this community, if they're driving highways through different communities, if they're if half of a community is incarcerated, whoever is doing that, whoever is perpetuating those policies has got to be hurting and kind of stuck in a sense of separation. And so in social justice communities, I've seen people really hanging on to the anger and the rage, and that's so often the impetus for change, right? There's a wisdom in the anger that tells us that something is wrong. And that's really important to listen to. But as so many different spiritual teachers have talked to us about, we can't hang on to the anger. We can't hold that, right? It's like Thich Nhat Hanh said, it's like a ball of fire. And then if we're holding the anger, ready to hurl it at someone else, we're inevitably burning our own hands. Or Nelson Mandela saying that resentment is like drinking poison and hoping that my enemies will die. So that energy, that resentment, that rage, that grief has to be moved up and out in order for our social change work to actually be effective, and for us to really be growing healthy families, healthy communities, healthy organizations, and a healthy society. We have to be healthy ourselves and really take the time to heal ourselves. And so what I saw over years of social justice work was people having their bodies break down, their hearts broken, and not know how to put themselves back together again, which really depletes social justice movements. If some of our most skilled, knowledgeable, wise workers are leaving the movement because they can't take care of themselves, then that's a problem. And that points to something specific about how we're doing the work. And I'm really grateful to say that I've seen a lot of progress in that realm in the last 5 years. The spheres of work of transformative justice, of healing justice, really growing, which is so not only important, it's imperative in order to keep our movements and our change makers alive. So I saw the social justice movement judging mindfulness and self-care. And then I also saw a lot of harm being done in yoga spaces, studios, contemplative communities, and sanghas, so many sits, not intentionally, but out of an unwillingness to really look and examine, or a spiritual bypass of saying that we're all one, we're in this together. And so why does it matter to talk about race, to talk about gender, to talk about disability? And so for me, entering various contemplative communities as a trans and queer person, it took a lot of courage to enter and to keep coming back. And my friend Teo Drake says that the teachings never failed me, but the teachers certainly did. And that's what I felt again and again in different spaces where I would go seeking care, seeking healing, and something transphobic was said, or another practitioner looks at me in this very unwelcoming way, or where I attend a class with a Black friend and she's hushed by the teacher, right? There's so many microaggressions that I've come to really anticipate that any new space that I'm going in, the idea of it being a safe space is only going to produce disappointment for me. So I go in anticipating harm and bringing my compassion practice of like, harm is going to happen here. And so how can I be with that? Am I willing to encounter that today? Do I need support? Do I need to talk to someone beforehand? Do I need to go with a friend? And I often do enter contemplative spaces and yoga spaces with a friend, especially if it's new. Just so there's someone else there to witness what's going on that I know has their eye out for racism, for transphobia, for ableism, for misogyny, and that I'm not the only one that's picking up the cues, that's thrown off by that teacher, their comment, their story. And at the same time, I really want to honor the power and the transformative potential of so many of the contemplative practices. And I think that if I operate both within the world of yoga and within the world of Buddhism, and they both have different philosophies that I think really point us to social justice and social change, right? So I think of the three jewels within Buddhism, the Dharma, the Sangha, and the Buddha, as being really, really radical, right? So the Dharma, do we really apply ourselves to loving all beings, to turning towards all suffering, to having a kind of wide perspective that equanimity lends us to forgiving the harm caused us, that we cause ourselves, and then just the larger truth that harm and suffering exists in the world. I think forgiveness has a lot to offer. So the Dharma, and then the Buddha, this not a worshiping of some external figure, right? My mother, when she walked in on me meditating recently, and I had a little makeshift altar when I was home in Colorado, and there was a Buddha on it, and she asked me afterwards, like, what are you saying to the Buddha? What are you asking the Buddha for? And I told her, it's not that. It's not a worship. It's the Buddha is an inspiration. The Buddha was a man, and that kind of his humanity shows that all of us can attain that kind of wisdom, that kind of grace, that kind of kindness and integrity. And so I told her I put the Buddha on my altar just as inspiration of this is a figure that's done that, and I hope to aspire to that. One of the practices that I use just kind of in a daily way around the Buddha is kind of thinking how would the Buddha handle this situation, or or even seeing everyone around me as the Buddha, right? So the difficult person on the train that's listening to their music too loud or has the legs spread too wide, he's also the Buddha. The woman in the really fabulous outfit with the big hair and really bright colors, she's the Buddha. The child screaming that doesn't want to go to school that day, he's the Buddha. So the radical possibility of that is, if we regard everyone as the Buddha, right, then it changes how we treat everyone. And then if we regard ourselves, right, truly as the Buddha, not to defame him, not to say that many of us are already there, but can we treat ourselves as we would treat the Buddha? So often, especially within caring professions or amongst change makers, we're the last one on the list. And as I've already said, that really depletes our movements. So could we treat ourselves as the Buddha? And then the Sangha. And this is something that I've struggled with, and it's taken me years, actually, to find my Sangha. I started meditating when I was 16, and meditated by myself for years. And I would try to go to Vipassana retreats and insight retreats and yoga retreats and trainings, and I've been in a lot of those spaces over the years, and they're inevitably difficult for me. But what I've discovered, and creating Third Root has really created this for me, is that even if my Sangha is not in those spaces, if I don't walk into a lot of those spaces and feel ease, feel comfort, feel like belonging, I've created that. I've created that through Third Root, and then through like a national network of people that are doing the work at the intersection of social justice and yoga and Buddhism. So now I have my people that I turn to when something happens, when I'm struggling with how to describe equanimity to different students, when I'm being triggered, my own past. I have people to turn to who understand both the internal process and the external circumstances of privilege and oppression, right? And having both is really important to me. People that can really point me in those moments towards, what am I not aware of? What do I need to work on? Where is racism embedded within me? Where is ableism coming up? How am I separating myself from this population? Or what are the ways in which I'm letting myself be run over? Not having boundaries enough, not having compassion enough for myself. My friend Eric Pettigrew describes compassion as yes, having an open heart, but a strong back, so that we're not blown over by the suffering of the world, which I think is so important. So I have people that can really point me to what's the internal work that I need to do. And then there are also people that can really notice, like, no, that was transphobic. That's not yours. That's not yours to work on. That was a mistake. That was an error, or around racism, around disability, around immigration status. People that really understand how these dynamics play out in the world. So now I've found my Sangha. And they're spread out all over the country, and sometimes we get together in one place. It's not often. And then within those people that I feel safe with, then I can grow how safe I might begin to feel in a different meditation center or a new yoga class. That I can have the reassurance of knowing that I have my people that really understand. And so then from that place, I can step out of my comfort zone and then eventually expand who my Sangha is. A few years ago, my teacher, Sean Korn, and I were talking, and there was something that had come up for me around homophobia within activism or within a yoga space. And she told me that, unfortunately, we're not going to end homophobia in my lifetime. And so I need to change how I relate to it. I need to shift how much it hurts me, and do the work within so that my wounds are healed, so that when something happens external to me, I'm not as shaken. So this intersection of social justice and contemplation are really exciting to me, because if we're doing the internal work and we're doing the external work, then transformation is not only possible, it's inevitable. And so can we each commit ourselves to that work of not adding a single further drop of suffering to a world that already hurts so much? Which is a really profound aspiration, right? To not say a single word that's going to be harmful. That means we all have to study up, because there's a lot of harmful words out there. There's a lot of things that are just part of our colloquial speech that hurt people and stereotype people and pathologize them and victim blame them. And then there's so many actions that inevitably contribute to the suffering of the world. That's part of how capitalism works. And in my early 20s, I really aspired to being pure, to not participating in anything that caused harm. And unfortunately, that's just not possible. That's not possible in our society. And so can we have a harm reduction approach of can I be loving in this moment? These are phrases borrowed from Larry Yang of East Bay Meditation Center. He asks, in different circumstances, can I be loving in this moment? Well, if I can't be loving, can I be kind? Well, if I can't be kind, can I not be judgmental? Okay, I can't not be judgmental. If I can't not be judgmental, then can I not cause harm? And if I can't actually not cause harm, can I cause the least harm possible? What I love about that is it offers so many options, and that it's all important, right? We aspire to being loving in our words and in our actions every moment, so that we're not adding a single further drop of suffering. And sometimes what it's going to look like is we're just not adding harm, or we're harming just a little bit, which is where forgiveness really balances that out, right? To recognize the harm that we participate in, and to ask for forgiveness. And forgiveness has been such a potent, transformative force in so many different societies, right? So in Rwanda, there was a photo project that took pictures of Hutus and Tutsis that had been on different sides of the conflict, and one had killed the other's father or son or destroyed their house or whatever. And through this organization, they're really intentionally coming into relationship with each other again, so that they can coexist in the marketplace in their villages. The same thing is happening in Israel and Palestine. We all know about the truth and reconciliation process in South Africa, coming to the table as an organization in the American South that's working on bringing the ancestors of former slave owners and the ancestors of former slaves, or rather the progeny of those people to the same table, and having them do work really intentionally together around racism. So forgiveness can be this really transformative external source as a form of social justice in the world. And I think our social justice movements really need to work on that, to incorporate more forgiveness, because inevitably there's someone that's not doing enough. There's someone that doesn't have the right analysis or the correct perspective. And if we're constantly judging each other and walling each other off, then our movements are going to become smaller and smaller. But if we do the work of forgiveness, then we're constantly bringing more people into our heart, right? And in a lot of those situations, reconciliation is not possible, but in a lot of them, it is. And so then the forgiveness can expand an organization and expand a movement until it's so much broader, as well as doing the internal work of expanding our own hearts, right? So that eventually, Sharon Salzberg says, we aspire to open our hearts so wide that it's as big as the world. Thank you very much for being with me today. If you have any questions, I'm available at jballard.com, and I would love to hear from you. Shambhala Mountain Center, it's been such an honor. Thank you, and may we all strive to become awake in the world. Blessings.
To learn more about these presenters, please visit the websites listed below.
Nestled in a beautiful mountain valley in the Colorado Rockies, Shambhala Mountain Center has been a destination for individual and societal awakenment for over 40 years. Every season, extraordinary people gather here to take part in a rich variety of retreats. Some come for a day, some for a weekend, a week, or a month, and some stay for decades. Everyone contributes a little something, or perhaps a big something, to this ongoing endeavor of manifesting good human culture, good human experience. It is said that the potency of the teachings, practice, and blessings that have occurred here over the years from some of the most powerful teachers of our modern era have processed the energies of the land in such a way that people's hearts and minds become quite available here. Shambhala Mountain Center is also home to the Great Stupa of Dharmakaya, a monument to human kindness and one of the largest and most significant examples of sacred architecture in North America. Thus, a visit to this mountain valley retreat is not only an occasion to slow down and rejuvenate. It is an opportunity for genuine transformation. Awakened heart, inherent goodness, peace, sanity. Rediscover it here. Radiate it everywhere.